It's all back.
All right, so it looks like we have 29 people on. It is 7:04, so I think we should get started, and then certainly as our additional people join, they can, hear from our alumni experts here. I just want to introduce myself quickly. I certainly know many of you that are here. I recognize names and know that I've worked with several of you. My name is Pam Ahern. I direct the employer engagement initiatives out of the Center for Career Development. I have worked at the college. This is my 18th academic year, so I have been at the college for quite some time. I was just telling our panelists that this was the easiest panel I have ever put together in my whole entire life, because I sent out the email and literally, I think, Lindsay, you responded in a half hour's time, and the rest of you just followed suit. Yes, 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 yes. And I think that really shows the power of Purple and how committed our alumni are to our students. And they'll get into this when they're chatting with you, but they want to help you. They want to be here for you. They want you to know that they are here for you. And so I wasn't at all surprised when I reached out to these folks, and they very happily agreed to sit on this panel tonight. I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves in a little bit and talk a little bit about what their role is at their company, what they do, and how, and the first thing they're going to tell you is how COVID has changed their way of work. Before I do that, I do want to just say a couple of things. My Wi-Fi during the day, when both my husband and I are on, is spotty. So if you lose me, I lose you, I will try my best to get us on board. I am sitting in a room where everything is connected, so I'm hoping everything is going to be fine and we're going to have no issues, and my family knows not to go online when I'm up here. Students, if you could stay on mute like you are now, and if you have a burning question that you want to ask as the panelists are speaking, please go ahead and jump in. But certainly at the end of our discussion from the employers, our alumni, that there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions for sure. But we want this to be discussion based. We want you guys to ask those questions that you're really curious about the answers to. And so please know that. Couple things too, we all know that this is not at all how you thought your senior year would end. And so we know there are so many disappointments that you have this year, and none of us could understand exactly what you're going through, but please know that we feel for you and the situation that you're in. And so we're all really trying to help you as best we can. Things are changing very rapidly, even if we go back to March 14th when we all started going remote. Things have changed so much, and then I feel like every week, I read something new, and so what we're discussing now, might even change 2 weeks from now, and you all know that, so just keep that in mind. No one has all the answers because we have not done this before. This is unprecedented for all of us, and so we're all kind of swimming together. I always think of that Dory from Finding Nemo, and just keep swimming. That's what I feel like some days. We all just need to just keep swimming and know that we're all swimming together. This event is meant for conversation, so I really do want you guys to be jumping in when you have questions, and that I did not graduate from Holy Cross, but I truly bleed purple after having been there for as long as I have been. But we are all in this together. We're all here to help you in any way, shape, or form that we can. So please call on us for when you need some of that help. And I will be following up from this session with the contact information for all of the alumni who are on here tonight, because I know that they would be happy to assist you in any way. All right, so with that, I'm gonna have, Brittany's in the top left-hand of my computer screen. So I'm gonna have Brittany start, and then the other alums can just jump in. Maybe we'll do Brittany, Vinny, Kara, Sammy, Madison, Lindsay. Do I have everyone? So Brittany, go ahead, start. Tell us a little bit about your role and how COVID has changed it.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Polanco. I graduated in 2012 as a psychology major. Currently, I I work at PepsiCo. So that's the company that owns not just brand Pepsi, but also has a ton of huge beverage and snack brands. Frito-Lay is beneath us. I was showing before my brand pride with Gatorade. So it's a giant company, and I currently am in HR. I've had a crazy career, and my current role, I'm coming back to HR after a 3-year stint in marketing and product development. And I'm actually coming back to PepsiCo after working at a startup, so getting a completely different experience there. And I've spent most of my career at PepsiCo, and right now is very, very unique, as Pam was saying. So my role is an HR business partner. So I'm assigned to a segment of the business, and I am their sole HR partner in charge of partnering with the business leaders to determine our talent strategy. And under normal circumstances, it's a lot of understanding the business and determining, how do we manage our people, right? Whether we're developing them, or attracting the right people, retaining them, offboarding them. But the particular group I support is our food service sales team. And at PepsiCo, that means that, we don't sell our products directly to consumers. We sell them to grocery stores, or we sell them to restaurants, or we sell them to e-commerce like Amazon, and they sell our product to consumers. And the sales group I support is food service, which is basically everything outside of grocery stores. Grocery stores are essential employers. All our food service customers are not. So that means that almost 50% of our business has closed. And so I'm in a very, very unique situation where I'm being asked, in partnership with the VP of that group, to be really agile and figure out a flexible approach where we can keep our team engaged, we can keep them employed, and we can keep them safe in a world where we know that they're salaried and half their business is closed. So it's been a really, really fascinating and engaging experience where I truly have a ton of opportunity to have a positive impact. I support approximately 300 people on this team. And, I feel very thankful for my liberal arts background and my very diverse experiences throughout my career, because I think that now is the perfect time to put into practice how do you come to the table with a really flexible approach to problem solving, work really quickly and collaboratively to come to a solution, and not be afraid to test things and learn and fail along the way. But I feel very proud to be working for PepsiCo right now, because I think you'll see in the news, how different companies have been dealing with the impact to areas of their business, which are, closing or no longer performing. And instead of laying people off, right, we've come up with a way to reassign people, because there are areas of our business where we are essential and we're still open and we have a lot of demand. And I'm also very fortunate that the president of our sector, Ann Fink, is a Holy Cross alum, and my current manager, Jessica Vona, who knows Lindsay and Kara, is also a Holy Cross alum. So I am definitely in a great place with incredible leaders, right, where we all truly lead with empathy. Right, and we put our people first, and I think that a huge point of pride as we've navigated this is that that's been our approach. So really interesting experience, and I think we're learning a ton that will help us far into the future beyond this.
Thanks, Brittany. How about you, Vinny?
Sure. Real quick shout out to all the HR business partners out in the world. I think the keeping employees safe piece is probably the biggest impact I've seen at my company, because mental health is, and maintaining your mental health in a time like this where everyone's isolated, you're by yourself, or just isolated in general, that can be really tough. And that's something that I've experienced firsthand. And some people are taking it better than others, but I think to have resources from HRBPs to help a global workforce like that, they're going through a lot right now. So if anything, I wish there's an HRBP for you, Brittany, so that you could have a therapist of your own. Yes. Also, Brittany and I used to be orientation leaders, so we knew each other back in college. But anyway, though, my name's Vinny Chanchak. I am a Holy Cross alum from the class of 2011. I'm currently a campus recruiter at HubSpot, which is, in short, a business-to-business software company based in Cambridge, Mass., where we work with businesses to offer marketing, sales, and customer service software to help businesses start and grow their business online, which right now is really humbling to be behind, mainly because with coronavirus is literally shut down industries, full industries, companies, and not to be dramatic, but has destroyed a lot of opportunities for people. And so, especially for those who run a small business or even businesses of all sizes. And with HubSpot, our software is meant to help bring a business online and grow their presence and based online, they can continue to grow their business in a time where you can't be physically with people. So to be in a place where we're helping businesses really survive right now with our software has been incredible to see. In fact, probably the biggest example that I most seen was the first responders website that the Attorney General released for the city of Boston. It was a website that's meant for first responders to have access to resources you need in a pandemic like this, and to get notifications and alerts about everything going on in Boston, and all built on HubSpot, which is exciting to be a part of, and it was a really proud moment to hear that last. So on a business level, that's how it's impacted us as a company. Personally, for me, as a campus recruiter, it is killing me not to be able to go to a college and visit students in person. Actually, I think my last visit to a college was actually Holy Cross back in, was it February, Pam, that we had that? Yeah, so that was my last visit, and to not be on campus anymore it's pretty much the sole responsibility. So we've had to pivot by actually doing things online a little bit more, and I know we're going to talk about like how we as recruiters engage online nowadays, and how there are creative ways to do it, which we'll also talk about. So that's been a bulk of my journey so far. COVID is navigating that landscape for myself as a recruiter and also for students looking for opportunities right now. And then on a more personal note, being able to work from home. Well, I've wanted to work from home more often. This is not how exactly I pictured it to be full-time remote, 24, well, not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week now. That's also an adjustment too. But I'm passionate that, or sorry, not passionate. I'm thankful that HubSpot has been in a place where remote work has been part of our culture for several years now, and it's something that has been seamlessly, it's been a seamless transition going kind of mode of working. So I won't steal the spotlight anymore, but I'll leave it to, I think Kara's next, right?
Sarah's
Sure.
next. Thanks, Vinny.
Great.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kara Hume. Thanks so much for having me, Pam. It's really wonderful to be here. I am an HR leader for GE Corporate. For those of you who don't know, GE has several big industries, big businesses in our portfolio. We make aircraft engines, wind turbines, gas turbines, and a lot of healthcare equipment. And so there's been pretty significant impact to a number of our industries. You could imagine impact to the airline industry as that relates to making aircraft engines. And on the other side of it, one of our healthcare businesses makes ventilators, and they are trying to pump out a 3-year supply of ventilators in 1 month. It's really extraordinary to see. So the role I play as an HR leader is everything from entry level pipeline, as Pam will share, and Cassie, I spend a lot of time on campuses all the way through executives. Right now I support finance, business development, and the lean organization. And so just a couple comments in terms of how COVID has changed my role. It really, we saw COVID, GE has 200,000 people around the world, 40, 50 countries. And COVID hit, we felt it hit in China, in our facilities there. And so we had some experience. I don't think anyone would have ever predicted what's happened to the world since we saw those early days in China and dealt with them. For me personally, my job has shifted from what felt like the normal start of a year to completely crisis management mode. So on two fronts, primarily safety of employees. So we were in early days helping employees get in and out of the office on red team, blue teams, and then letting people be home. Then we've been handling a lot of patients who are sick, people who had been in the office at sites. How do you handle that with people who are around them? What are the precautions you need to take in order for them to return? What medical help can you provide to them and their families? And then also actually protecting the company is sort of the secondary focus. This is not a small problem, and I don't even think that needs to be explained. It's very serious for the economy. It's very serious for every company, and very few are going to be sailing through this with no issues. And my boss said at the start of this, we have a new CFO, and she said, hope is not a strategy to navigate this type of situation. You really need to be very serious. You need to buckle down and determine strategies to either redeploy people, focus people on the stuff that that needs the areas of focus, as Brittany was describing. So we have a lot of work going on by way of our workforce, keeping the company safe, saving, preserving cash, lowering costs in every way we can. And so huge focus there, and eager to jump into the rest of the discussion about obviously how this situation impacts seniors and finding jobs. So look forward to that aspect of the discussion when we dive in. I think maybe I'd be remiss, Pam, not to share the personal side of COVID-19 for me and my husband has been just amazing. So I have 3 kids that are 6, 4, and 2. All daycares, so I live right outside Boston. Daycares and schools are closed. We haven't been able to secure a babysitter because our babysitters are quarantined at home. And so my husband and I are working full time between the hours about 6 a.m. and 11 p.m., navigating 3 kids, teaching them school, the whole thing. So it's really been amazing to have that aspect of this experience as well. So just had to share. I know, Pam, it took me a week to get back to you on my first one. I'm like, I'm really sorry. I'm here. I have a lot going on at the moment. So anyway, thanks for letting me share. And I'll pass it to the next person.
Sammy?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll try to be brief, but I'll echo a lot of what has been said before. So just a brief background on me. I'm an HR business partner. We just have a different title at Citi. We call them HR advisors. So it's been interesting for me because I joined Citi in August of 2019. And prior to that, I had spent 7 years at Goldman Sachs. So I was kind of in a transition to begin with, and then was happy to have wrapped up year end, where we were doing all of our compensation and promotion processes, and was kind of happy to have gone through that. And then sort of COVID hit. So it's been very interesting for me from a learning perspective, just because of the size of Citi. So similar to GE, we have about 200,000 employees around the globe, a presence in around 100 countries. And I support a global business. So really working with the head of operations and technology for Citi's private bank. So it's just interesting to really partner with our regional colleagues and understand some of the challenges that are happening in different regions. So obviously, like Asia had exposure to this first, kind of now gleaning from them some of the lessons learned as we start to have some of the discussions around what will it look like to bring employees back to the office. And then just there are different challenges in every region. And I can sort of talk for an hour about that. But what I will say that has been interesting is just seeing how quickly Citi has been able to pivot to a remote working arrangement. So I think the latest stat is that about 92% of Citi employees are working from home, which probably no one could have dreamed that would have happened, and how quickly we were able to scale. And then there's just been a lot of other questions that have come up that we sort of have to tackle on a real-time basis as it impacts employees and how we can help them. So I think what will be interesting is there's obviously going to be a lot of downstream impacts, just as we think about what the future of work looks like, what does flexibility look like, and those are, I think, broader discussions that'll take place as a result of the pandemic. So.
And Madison, thank you for that, Sam. Madison.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Madison Horrell. I was class of 12 at Holy Cross, so Brittany and I were classmates. I work at Alliance Bernstein. I started at Alliance, so I was an economics major at Holy Cross. I started at Alliance Bernstein as a private wealth associate, moved my way around the company into learning and development, and now I'm a campus recruiter and a human capital business partner. My company just recently moved to Nashville, so I am the lone human resources person in New York supporting our investment teams, while most of the human resources folks are down in the Nashville office. So I'm responsible for recruiting our interns and our associates, as well as building the programming for them. Right before this call, I was emailing all of our associates, telling them that their start dates were delayed, and all of our interns telling them that their internship program was virtual and shortened. So those are two of the changes that we are experiencing. Throughout this time, I've, really leaned on my Holy Cross background and thought about, how we can be men and women for others through this time. So I took the approach of what can I give to people? At a time where everything is so uncertain, I started doing virtual info sessions like week 2 of quarantine, just saying like, this is what my company has to offer. And I do office hours with, people that are looking for internships, people that are looking for associate positions or just resume help. So anyone on this call that wants, to talk or practice interviewing, happy to do it. So that's kind of the approach I've taken. Also kind of leaning on my Holy Cross background in education, I've, had to communicate with people of different backgrounds and different personalities, and just thinking about how I can make decisions for people, that I am able to make. Working with investment professionals at a time where the market is really volatile, when should I be asking them questions? When should I just make a decision or hold off and it's not something that needs to be answered today? So definitely just being creative and trying to manage what's going on is important. But we were talking about it before you all hopped on, how clear communication is really so key at this time. So to the extent you can communicate quickly and clearly, very important. But I'm looking forward to our conversation, and feel free to reach out after if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Madison. Lindsay, you're up.
All right, great. Well, I think I'm gonna take us home, and I want to make sure we're able to get into the questions. So good evening, everyone. It's so great to see you all. My name is Lindsay DeVagno. I was the class of 2005 at Holy Cross, and I was an English major and an economics minor. And I currently work for Keurig Dr. Pepper. So Brittany, a direct competitor of yours, and started my career with GE. So where I got to know Kara very well. And really started my HR career. So it's been a great journey. I have a role like many of you have outlined, so I'm also an HR leader. What's interesting about my role right now is that I support our supply chain organization. So all of our plants and all of the team members that actually make our products. So unlike Brittany, I'm kind of on the other side of the coin where our workers are essential because we do supply grocery stores. And so the main focus and where my world got turned upside down 7 weeks ago now was when this all really hit, and it was all about how do we, number one, keep employees safe. So I think that's a theme, right, that we've heard. That was number one. So how do you actually keep a business running that's seeing demand similar to Kara's experience like we've never seen before, while also maintaining business continuity. So it absolutely went into crisis management and daily management of the business, days and days on end, where the days just kind of all swirl together. I think the thing that's really helped me is being able to deal in ambiguity. So when you think about a liberal arts education and what you're all learning at Holy Cross, it's how do you think and make decisions in an environment where there is so much uncertainty. And so that's really what the business has been going through in the past several weeks, is really managing through something that we don't know what's on the other side or how it's going to turn out. So I think a lot of the experiences I've had are similar to others. I think in terms of business, what's fascinating to me and where I wonder if the world will ever be the same is just the speed of decision making and the way that we've had to make decisions so much more quickly than we have. whether or not that will kind of stick as a way of working. I think also, if I reflect back on my role previously, I was traveling 2 times a month at least, and now no one's doing that, right? And what do we learn from that? And how does just our way of operating and carrying out business just look fundamentally different after this? I think the world will go back to some sort of normal, but it won't be the normal that we knew, at least for probably a very long time. So with that, great to join all of you. I know, like Pam said in the beginning, I've been thinking of folks that are going through milestones in their lives, and I know that all of you graduating college and looking to start a career, this is certainly less than optimal. So happy to be able to help in any way I can.
Great, thank you all. I appreciate that introduction. We're just going to jump right into some questions. And again, you don't all need to respond. If you feel like one of your peers says hit the nail on the head, we can just move on to the next. But discussion is encouraged. So how should seniors put their best foot forward in terms of recruiting and/or looking for a full-time job during this pandemic?
I can get us started, since been in these shoes, as have all of us on the panel for sure. I would probably say first thing that I wish I did when I was graduating was understanding who I was as a package. So what does that package really mean? It's a mix of a few things, a few components. One is just understanding what are your values personally? Like, what are some things that really give you energy from whether it's types of work, things in the world that really just bring you sparks of joy, the Marie Kondo style, and really understanding where do you like to get that energy from, because that'll help you really pick the environments and places that you want to apply to, and then really just understand your interests as well. I think with Holy Cross, with our holistic education that we have in a liberal arts environment, we are pretty amenable. We're very moldable to many different industries, so it can be really easy to try to adapt to everything out there. But I think having at least a few interest areas to find for yourself that really give you energy, that really give you joy, that really would be something you want to do 40 hours plus a week. That would be something that I would really ask all of you to think about, since when you do that and have like your specific targets and things that you really know about yourself, you'll find that you'll gravitate towards certain roles. As you reach out to people to learn more about hubs or to network, you'll find people being responsive as a result of you knowing yourself a little bit more. And I think that, yeah, I'll keep it brief. I'm really bad at brevity, so I'm going to just stop there. But I think that's where I'd start.
Hey, Pam, I can jump in next if that's okay. It's Kara. I think I love that as an intro. And maybe what I would add to that is I think I would embrace the reality of where we are. And that means like understand what it means for the various industries you may want to pursue. And I think secondarily, almost embrace it. Like it can hurt for a minute, like, wow, this isn't the way I wanted it to go. This wasn't my senior year. This wasn't like exactly the job I wanted. It wasn't the process I wanted. I want to be able to go. And no, we all feel a version of that sting right now. There's something hitting every single one of us, and it does sting. And then somehow being able to like lift above that and say, okay, I'm not going to wallow in it because I'll get stuck in it forever. And I'm going to now embrace the situation. I'm really going to embrace it. And Pam asked me the other day, like, what would your number one piece of advice be for the seniors? And I thought, wow, like what an amazing time for people who actually live by, men and women, for others, to be having a whole class of people from Holy Cross graduating, and go help, go find a way that you can, this situation that I'm encouraging you to sort of get our heads around is going to be the reality for a while. And I don't know what the new norm looks like. Personally, I don't know anyone does, as Pam said. And so I think get in there, go help. And it may not look exactly like what you thought it was going to look like, but there's a lot of ways you can jump in. It may be different industries, different types of roles, but you will learn something from every one of those experiences. And nobody's actually going to expect your resume to look normal. No one expects our resume to look normal in these periods either. And then to me, the way to go find those jobs is really, I think, a lot of individual time, attention, hence these kinds of things. And all of us here with you, like, find a person, find the family friend, find someone who, and literally offer. Don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the exact job title. My advice is just get out, find a place, find something that you're going to learn from, and find a way to help. And this will all come back to a normal cycle before we know it, but not right now. So that's my added comments to Vinny.
One other thing that I would add here, directly in line with Kara's comment of go help and go kind of find people that you align with, is kind of cleanse your platforms. Cleanse the information that you're taking in, and think about people that you admire, or people that are doing things that you look at and say, wow, that's awesome. And take in information and news and social media content from them. And that will help position you in a really positive way. And hopefully, you'll see someone doing something that inspires you to kind of do something that fulfills you in that way too.
Yeah, and those are all great comments and advice. And I think, the other thing is, if you peel it all back, right, I think one of my business leaders said very early on, don't let any crisis go to waste, right? And I think as much as there are challenges, there are opportunities in this. There are opportunities to step up, to show what you can do, and to lead. I think there is a lack of leadership in the world, right? In us looking around. And I think what we all need right now is strong leadership in businesses, in industry and nonprofit, right? Wherever there is something to go do, we need people to lead through this and provide guidance, because there is so much anxiety and people are confused and people are looking up to say, what do I believe and how do I get through this? So you are all trained to be leaders. Go out into the world and lead in something that you're passionate about, and the rest will follow.
I love that. And I think that as I reflect on my own experience coming out as a senior, one of the things I think I could have done a lot better is prepare. And I think a lot of what Vinny said gets to that. So if you follow that advice, and then you add on Kara's of make sure you have that perspective and that understanding of how it's impacting those areas that you now understand are the areas you want to pursue, that's going to make you really prepared to take action. And I think, the advice I would take, which is in line with what Lindsay and Madison were kind of getting to, is to be confident, right, in what your strengths are, why you're passionate, how you're going to be serving people and companies and teams during this time. And don't be fearful of trying, because there's going to be paths that materialize and others that don't. But I think the most important thing you can take from Holy Cross is a learning mindset. And I have not stopped learning since the day I stepped foot into my career from Mount St. James, and I never want to stop, because that's when you stop growing. But sometimes things don't happen the way you think they will. But if I love the, don't let a crisis go to waste. Don't let any, failure, however you want to call it, the things that don't go as planned, don't let that go to waste. Learn something from it, and don't be afraid to try again. You have an incredible network behind you with, the group of crusaders across different industries and careers and backgrounds. Tap into them, be confident, and work hard, and, you're going to get to where you want to go. It just might look a little different.
If I would just add like a tactical piece of advice, and I think it's kind of leverage the extra time that you might have. And I see a lot of times people use the same resume when they're applying to different jobs, but I would really encourage you to really take a look at the job description and sort of think about how that relates to what you might not think are relevant experiences, but kind of have like some introspection and see what they're looking for. And maybe you were a treasurer at a student club, or you took certain classes, and really highlight that and really tailor it for the job that you're applying to. So it's very easy, I feel like now, to apply to just 10 jobs a day on LinkedIn. But I would challenge folks to really be thoughtful about the jobs they're applying to and sort of the resume that they're putting forward. And it's not going to be one size fits all. But I do echo what everyone else said on the panel, but just more from a tactical perspective as you're sort of starting to put your resume out there, put feelers out there. I just went through this process last year when I was applying at Citi, so.
Great, thank you all. Can you talk a little bit about, I think all of you touched on the Holy Cross Network, and can you talk a little bit about in this time right now, and you guys all talked about how crazy busy work is and things are changing and you're having to pivot. What's appropriate when students are reaching out to you to network? How do they start that conversation with you because they know how crazy you are? Or, can you kind of talk a little bit about networking etiquette during this time frame or this time that we're living in right now?
Yeah, I think this is one where, I think that preparedness really comes into play. And you want to make it easy for whoever you're reaching out to understand how they can help you. And if you understand what you're looking for and why you're looking for it and how you're qualified to do that thing, whether it's direct or indirect, that's going to aid you tremendously in making it easier for the person on the other side, which, as you can hear, because that person on the other side is likely an HR person. And there is a tremendous amount going on, but you also have alum, right, who can help give guidance, right, within that space. But you have to come to the table by doing some of that groundwork. And I think that's going to be a huge differentiator. And again, be iterative of like start somewhere, bring in someone and get feedback, get a little further. But I think that truly, as I think about engaging with employers right now, there's a piece of empathy. And I think, a couple of folks had mentioned, you definitely want to go a route where either it's an alum, right, or a family friend or someone it's going to make it a little bit more of a facilitated process that I think will help right now also.
Yeah, if I could just echo that, I would say it's really important to have a hook when you reach out to someone. So don't make it broad. You need to do your research and sort of say, I see that you were a poli-sci major. I'm a poli-sci major. How did you transition into HR? How did you transition into X career? Would it be okay if I reach out to you again in X amount of time? Or could you spare 15 minutes? But I think it's important not to just sort of say like, oh, you're an alum, I'm an alum. Like, I love Holy Cross, don't you? Because people get a lot of messages on LinkedIn. So you really have to have like a succinct hook on, I think, how Brittany said, how they can help you and make it crisp. So that would be my piece of advice.
And maybe the one thing I would add to those great pieces of advice is I think this is your moment to step in and grab it and own it. And so you doing the research, you giving it the thought, you figuring out how to personalize the note. And yes, leverage the network, but to the extent you leverage like your parents' networks or your friends' networks, honestly, one of my biggest pet peeves is when I get a note from somebody's father or a father's friend. Like I literally write back every time and say, here's my contact information. Please have the student contact me. Like I want the personal ownership. I want the personal drive, the personal touch, because it shows you really want it and you put the thought into it. And so that would be maybe my add to this.
Yeah, +1 to everything that was said. The only thing I would add, for brevity's sake, is also be patient when it comes to waiting for a response from those you're contacting, because as you can tell, everyone's online right now, probably spending too much time on the internet. So there are going to be times where people might turn off their technology. So make sure to respect the amount of time in between messages and know that everyone may not respond right away. And that's especially true for recruiters right now. Madison, I know you can probably echo this on me, but we're getting messages flooded to the point where it's taking me several days to get back to just say hello. And so just be patient and assume positive intent throughout your follow-ups. And I know that's one of the questions you're going to ask, Pam. So that was my only 2 cents there.
Thanks, Madison. Yeah, did you have anything to add, Madison, to that? Just 2 thumbs up. All right, good. So great segue, Vinny. How often, or how, if students reach out to a recruiter, how much time should they wait if they don't hear from you? How many times can a student follow up and not be annoying or stalkerish? Like what's okay for them to do?
You know, Pam, I can start with that. I think one thing that's really interesting right now that's a little bit abnormal, well, one thing that's abnormal amongst many is I think a lot of employers, and I'll speak for my own, are trying to figure out what to do. Like, it's a live conversation. So we just yesterday made a decision around our intern program. Like, that was a live question, right? So I think there's just an acknowledgement of, I don't know that the rules of the game have necessarily changed, but I do think there is a professional maturity and acknowledgement of understanding where the company is at and saying that very overtly, and just being polite, right? So I think if you don't hear back in a week, where a week may have been the standard before, I would say maybe give it 2 weeks now, right? So, but again, I think it's okay to follow up. It's all the context that you put around it in terms of reflecting that you are mature and understand what the organization is going through. And in the second follow-up, I would just ask the question of basically when could I expect to hear back, so that you then don't need to follow up again. So that would be my guidance, is it's probably kind of double the time that you would usually let pass by. And a lot of employers are just trying to figure out what to do at this point.
Thank you. That's a great way to put it. Students are reaching out to me, as you can imagine, and I'm trying to educate them that you all, businesses are just trying to figure out how you're going to continue to do your business and keep your own staff employed, so that it just is, patience is a virtue here for students. So thank you for reiterating that. About commenting on kind of, and Kara, you touched on this about talking about embracing the reality. Can you talk about that in terms of perhaps our seniors thinking outside the box when it comes to considering a job or a career that perhaps they hadn't thought about before COVID-19 graced us? Thinking outside the box, that there will be lots of positions available, but perhaps not in an area that they had ever thought of before. Is that question clear?
Yeah, look, I'll start, because I think this is my piece of advice to your point, Pam, in the upfront was like, this is what I hope the team here on the phone can really embrace. And I'm trying to embrace this new norm in my own life every day, like find the positives of it all. So I may be trying to share that same advice with you guys. And so to me, like, not just outside the box, but when you think about, I mean, everyone on the phone here would probably elaborate on this. What you look for when you're hiring students coming out of school are really great minds, people who can deliver, people who can work with other people who can solve problems, demonstrate leadership, balance a lot of priorities. And even if you just stop there, right, that whole list of things, and you think about, to Pam's question, so thinking outside the box, you can do and demonstrate those things anywhere. You can do that at a food bank. You can go spend your time, if you can't find a job and you volunteer your time to be the main coordinator of the food coming in and the food going out for whatever period, that's a job. It doesn't even have to be paid, right? And then literally those are things you can put on a resume and speak to in both the service you provided and also the leadership you exhibited and the collaboration you exhibited. And or you can find ways. Similarly, I know, like, this summer everyone's here talking about it, like, we're trying to find remote projects for people to do because we can't bring people on board. Like, oh my gosh, jump on a project, take a project, even if that means like you get in on a company for X period of time because they give you a project until things calm down. So I guess that would be my opening thoughts. Like, think about the skills that the employers are looking for you to demonstrate, and just go find ways to do it. Like, it doesn't have to be anything traditional for this. I would bet you for the next 2 years even, really. And then my other thought is, over the period, also keep learning. Like, I see what universities and college and even other grad programs are doing by way of virtual learnings and seminars. Like, keep your skills fresh and contemporary, and help yourself position maybe from an education standpoint while you're doing some work that might be a little outside the box. So those are my quick thoughts, and then I'll throw it out to the group.
Kara, I love your suggestion of keep learning. I'm in finance, and a lot of students are asking me, what can I do? And computer science is becoming more and more popular, or computer science skills, coding in particular, is becoming more and more useful in finance. And there are a lot of schools that are offering free coding classes and free other classes online. So building skills that maybe you didn't get at Holy Cross, or even just building skills that you already have, to show employers that you're working through this time and you're finding a way to bolster what you already have to make yourself even more desirable down the line. And down the line might not be in a couple of months when hiring freezes lift. It could be even further that way. So how are you going to continue to do that? And what's your strategy going to be for continued learning?
Yeah, I would say even things like Excel and PowerPoint, which you'll use a lot on a daily basis in a lot of roles. I didn't take any Excel classes at Holy Cross. I wish I would have taken sort of a class before, but really important to sort of just brush up on those just like fundamental skills, and sort of like put your best foot forward when you're interviewing. So I would echo what Madison said.
Yeah, and this is actually a topic I feel very passionate about, in terms of being really open to what your career can look like. I have gone down a lot of different paths. I've taken a lot of jobs that no one else wanted, and I'm so much better for it. I think one thing I would advise all of you to do is really try to detach from particular outcomes or specific paths, especially when they're ego-driven, which takes a lot of self-awareness. And I know that I personally struggled with this when I was coming out of school. But the earlier you can start to think about it is like really getting to why you want that job or that company, and making sure that it aligns with your purpose, your values, a culture you're going to thrive in, and a company where you can learn and grow. Because that's what's going to set you up to be successful and happy and fulfilled. And those ego-driven pursuits are not. And I've learned that the hard way. And so I'd say something to pause as you're thinking about what could my career look like is to be very open and talk to companies you didn't think you might want to work for. I didn't even know, my first company I worked for was Frontier Communications. It's telecommunications. It's like rural landlines. They acquired some Verizon businesses, so you know of them more in the Northeast now. But I had no idea who they were. I was not passionate about telecom, but I learned a tremendous amount there. And I gained such valuable mentors. The experience I got was far beyond what I probably would have many other places, given I was right out of college. So be really open and take the time, again, echo that, take the time to know what your purpose, your values, what type of culture you want. And use that to guide you.
Anyone have anything else to add to that? You all said it beautifully. Thank you.
I would just say, when I started at Goldman, I actually started as what they call a contingent worker. So I wasn't full-time, but it was like a 6-month assignment, and it led into a full-time position. So, also be open to some of those opportunities as you're starting off. It might not be what you envisioned, but it could lead to sort of a full-time opportunity. And I think a lot of firms right now might be sort of more conservative on the hiring front. So you might see more opportunities that are sort of like contract driven, or 6 months, 9 months. So I would say, at least I know, like when I was applying for jobs right out of Holy Cross, I kind of like hesitated from looking at temp opportunities, but I would sort of expand and be open to those as well.
Yeah, and I would definitely concur with that, Sam, that I think this is, again, unprecedented times. And I think any of those micro opportunities, project-based things, 6-month stints, I think, students, you should be looking at those for sure, to get some of those, to build some of those skills and get some exposure. I am just looking at the time. I do want to make sure students have an opportunity to ask questions. I do want to put a little pitch in for all of you to take a look at Vinny's LinkedIn profile and perhaps ask to connect with him on LinkedIn, because he's doing some kind of fun things on TikTok, on LinkedIn, to educate students in a very fun way. Vinny, can you just talk a teeny bit about what made you do that, and what are the outcomes? Are you seeing anything other than maybe a lot of comments on your LinkedIn page?
It's funny you say that, because it's actually because of the Holy Cross community that got me onto TikTok in the first place. Because as a campus recruiter, half of my role is also figuring out how do students want to receive information about how to improve in their job search, how to actually go about it the right way, the appropriate way. So traditionally, we've done things like blog posts, email campaigns, virtual events like this. And after going to an event that I went to with Pam, one of the resounding pieces of feedback was from students is I read too much. I watch a lot of video. I don't want to sit through another hour-long event when I've already gone through a whole day of classes. But if you get me on TikTok, I'll watch TikTok, because TikToks are literally 10-second videos or less. So, and I wish I had a method to my madness, and I'll keep it brief. I was literally on it just during quarantine just to have something to scroll through and get laughs and cheap laughs, and realize people are using TikTok to actually share tips about how to become a millionaire, how to actually make things like whipped coffee. By the way, I cannot believe that's a thing. So I thought, well, I haven't seen anything about how to help with the job search. And so I started doing that and did one video, put it on LinkedIn for my network and others to see. And I didn't expect how much it would resonate with people in terms of how quick they got the information they needed. And second, just how much humor was really needed during a time like this. So if anything, that's been really the biggest outcome, is that it's been helpful for people in a really brief, abbreviated version. And it's also given a new tone to a time that's, very tough.
Yeah. And it's great. It really, people check it out, because it gives me pleasure to see what Vinny has posted on any given day on LinkedIn. And it's actually really good content. So just delivered in a fun way.
Thanks, Pam. I'm not dancing in it, so don't expect me to dance in it.
I'm waiting, Vinny. I want to see that happen. Students, do you have any question for our alumni? And I would say just go ahead and unmute your mic and jump on in if you're comfortable doing that, or write in the chat and I will read your question.
I just have a kind of general question. If you guys talked about different ways that you started out in the industry and such, how did you kind of find HR if it wasn't what you initially went out looking for?
That's an awesome question, Adair. So when I graduated from Holy Cross, I said that I graduated as an econ major, went into client service and wealth management. And with every job change I made, I realized I made it so that I was working more with people and helping them to either join the firm or make decisions within it. So it was just, I wanted to build relationships, and I was building them with clients, but I was more and more focused on doing that with the people of my firm, and finding great talent to bring to the firm. So it was kind of just what motivated me. I like talking to people. I like helping people. And that's what led me to HR.
I can share kind of a funny, bumpy path to HR that includes one of my fellow panelists. So I had no idea what I wanted to do during most of undergrad, I'll be really honest. I changed my path of what I wanted basically every year. In my senior year, I came in thinking I wanted to go to dental school. And I decided that that was really silly of me. And I wanted to start working and making a living right away. And so here I was senior year without a path. And I tapped into the Holy Cross network. I was like, I'm a psychology major. What do you do with psych? People. And there was a football mentoring program that I was able to tap into as a cheerleader. And they matched me with an alum who owned a benefits company to learn more about HR. And I was like, oh, really cool. And around the same time, I was also trying to learn more about HR, and I had gone to career planning and I had mentioned this to them. And this crazy thing happened where I ended up having an informational interview with Kara. I had always loved GE. I like stalked them on campus because I thought I could see their culture was so cool, and seemed like somewhere I would thrive because they had such a close-knit community similar to what we had at Holy Cross. And Carrie and I were actually co-panelists at the Women in Business conference this year, so she already knows this story. But I think a great learning, because when I came into that informational interview, I had no idea really like why I wanted HR other than, hey, I have a psych degree, and I like people, which every HR person I know is going to cringe hearing that. And honestly, I think just context for everyone. I family wise, right? I come from a very blue collar family. Internships throughout my time at Holy Cross, I really was kind of like trying to figure it out. But I'm so grateful that Kara took the time and gave me that experience, because I could feel in that interview that I was unprepared. And I could sense, right, coming out of it, I could have done a lot better. And so as I went into, my mentor through the football program set up informational interviews from me, and I applied that learning. Right. And I was very prepared for those meetings. And he also gave additional preparation. And coming out of it, right, none of those ended up in a job, but they all taught me a ton about what HR is and what that world looks like. And I felt strongly that it was still a path I wanted to go down. And so when it came down to it, and I got really close to graduation. I didn't have a job, and a friend of mine had done an internship at Frontier, the company I went to, and knew they had an opening for an internship, right? I didn't have a full-time job coming out of school. So similar, Sammy, right? I think that's a great path to go down. And when I got to that interview, I was very prepared because I'd learned from the experience from Kara. And even though it didn't pan out, right, I'm so grateful that she took that time and that I was able to learn. I learned from all of those informational interviews I had after, and I was able to pair up like my experience, my understanding of the HR world, and successfully land myself a role coming out of that. So, you know, just an interesting way. Again, it's bumpy along the way sometimes, but I would have never been successful at the end if not for those bumps that led to it. So thank you again, Kara.
That's a great story. That's a great story. And also, you know, truly representative of the Holy Cross network, and you know, how our alums do want to talk with you and answer your questions. But then also, Brittany, a good point about learning from each and every conversation that you have, you know, to build upon that, and get better, make yourself better for the next conversation.
Pam, if I could add one thing here, when I was getting ready to try to pivot my career from working in something that was almost pure finance into HR, it took taking a step back and moving into a more administrative role with someone that was in that line of business. So I, you know, took a step back from working with financial advisors and worked with one of our managing directors as his admin, because he was doing a lot of hiring at the firm. And I said, you know, if I'm going to want to be involved in hiring, I should probably align myself with that person. But it was in a position that paid less, with less, you know, notoriety and, you know, sexiness. But it got me onto the right path, and I built the skills that I needed to pivot. And ultimately met so many people that were able to help me in the future because I took that step back. So don't be afraid of either taking a step back or in a different direction, so that you can build the skills you need to get somewhere. Even if you've, you know, had a job or maybe thought about going one way, you can still pivot and go the other way. Holy Cross gave you a toolkit to do almost anything. So sometimes it just takes finding a way that you want to go and starting at the bottom of that ladder to get there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice, Madison. And I think one kind of piece of it, a tip to take away from this is that with every job you take, you're still learning, and that you want to be thinking about, Vinny, what you said earlier, what energizes you, what brings you joy in your job, and what doesn't, and trying to lead yourself to the things that do bring you joy, and that you're always learning, no matter how many years you've been at a company or doing a job, that it's always about learning and growing it and pivoting to the next, whatever that next might be. Do we have a question here? Nope, no questions in the chat. Who else has a question for our alumni panelists? You will never get these 6 people in the same room again, I promise. Or maybe not, maybe you will. Danielle?
First, thank you so much for all being here. I really appreciate it, especially during this time. But I guess the question I have is, you all kind of talked about shifting expectations a little bit, being open to applying to jobs in different fields. So how do you recommend kind of catering past experiences you've had when applying to jobs that aren't in that same field? Like, for example, I interned at an advertising agency this summer, and I love my experience, but I know that, those opportunities might not be there. So when applying to different fields, how do you recommend kind of doing that?
Yeah, so I can start us off with this one. So, I think a couple of things. I think first of all, coming out of school, employers very rarely look or expect you to have the technical skills, right? So I think while it's good, and if you've done an internship in the same industry, great, but it's not a requirement or a prerequisite. I think especially now, companies understand that what people's intentions were may not be opportunities that are currently available in the marketplace. So I think what's really important now is to really emphasize those intangibles like we've talked about, right? So how do you manage the ambiguity? How are you self-driven, right? Because more than likely, wherever you start, you're going to be starting from your house, right? So how do you demonstrate that, to Kara's point earlier, you can multitask, you can lead through projects, you can think through ambiguity, you're a leader. And that's really what companies are craving right now. Is more than ever, they're looking for candidates that have agility. Because like some people said, I think Brittany, you spoke to this, we have been having to take people that are doing jobs and then go ask them to do something entirely different. And the people that are able to learn and have a willingness and openness to learn and be flexible are the people that are going to be able to continue to be employed and generate value and benefit to the company. So I would just say you guys all have so many of the great intangibles, and don't underestimate that. It's so valuable right now. And if you can demonstrate how you've done those things rather than I had X or Y internship in this industry or that, how can you come in and lead through a crisis like this, manage yourself and contribute from day one? And it'll be so much more about that than what you may have done technically in an industry or in an internship.
I would emphasize that. Lindsay almost took like my exact words out of my notes and said them out loud. So I won't reiterate. The only thing I would add to it is I remember when I graduated, I'm pretty sure Pam and Amy like helped me script this, because I don't even think I understood what it meant, but they said, yes, like a liberal arts education, it teaches you to think and be agile and think on your feet and solve problems and work with people and communicate effectively. And I knew that, but I don't think I actually have really appreciated what that meant until I got out into the working world. And then as you progress and you work through crises, and then you switch jobs and you switch industries and you have the skills just like you're using at Holy Cross to bounce from class to class and topic to topic, and you're solving problems and you're so thank you for the answer, Pam and Amy. And I give you guys that answer too, because to Lindsay's point, it's all those soft skills. And then it is your education. It is your education that's prepared you for this moment. And if ever, like there's been a time when you can like shine those skills, it's definitely now. So that would be the part I would add.
Yeah, and I think just highlight things that, like, it's almost like putting pen to paper. Like, I'm sure a lot of you are student athletes, or you're working multiple work study jobs while being like an officer of a club, highlight those experiences and how they relate to the position that you're applying to. Because I think you're right, it's not really about the experience when it's an entry-level job, but it's more about those like soft skills, right? How you sort of have demonstrated like that tenacity, that kind of grit, and being agile. And I think even as Holy Cross students, you're balancing a lot, but you almost have to do like just sort of like write down everything that you're involved in. What are your responsibilities? And then, you know, look at the job description that you're applying to and really try to marry the two.
Also, as Holy Cross students, you are well versed in so much, and you are experts at building connection, even if you don't realize it already. You've taken so many different types of classes that you could find someone who has a major that was completely different than yours and still have something to relate to them on. So think about who might be interviewing you and do a little research on them. Figure out ways that they know something that you appreciate too, and leverage those connections to kind of build even more of a connection with the people that you're talking with.
Yeah, and I'll just one really tangible thing that I've seen in interviewing students in the past, and as someone who's had to a lot of times in interviews pull these things of what we're saying is what I call transferable experience. Right? It's not direct experience doing the job you're applying for, but you have an experience that you can absolutely transfer those skills to be successful in the job. Where I see students miss the mark when I'm interviewing them is they don't know what they're transferring them to. And that is where they lose me, because if you don't understand the role you're applying to or what skills would be important, and this comes, it's all related, right? If you know the context of that company, the function, right? If you're applying to a sales role, I think this particular question, you're saying you had an internship in advertising. And let's say, for example, you're now going to try to pursue a career in sales. What's really important is that you don't just speak from the lens of advertising, which is what you know. You speak from the lens of, hey, I know what sales is, and I'm excited about it because I've done the work to understand what it is. And here's how in advertising, I can take my understanding of the consumer. I can take my ability to sell an idea to a client. Like, this is where you start to bridge from what is your experience to what the role is, and where I 10 times out of 10 would love to hire you, because you're then showing me that agility and that critical thinking that I need from, the young talent that I want to bring into our company.
Awesome. That's great. And you don't need, it doesn't have to just be a job or an internship that you're drawing from. It can be, I think Sam said, if you're an athlete or any of the clubs that you belong to, you gain skills through those experiences too. So talk about that. If it's a sales role, you're going to be applying to Pepsi, and Brittany's going to be looking at your resume. Talk about the fact that you are a tour guide. That is a sales position. That is the first line of defense that the college has for selling the school. So think about what it is that this employer is looking for, and think about how you might have those skills from your advertising internship or whatever experience it is. Good, great question. Great question. And it's a really great answers. What other questions do we have? Any other questions? Because I had one more question about virtual interviewing, how from our alumni, if that was something that they could talk about. I don't know, students, if you're interested in that, but clearly all interviews these days are happening virtually. So if anyone could comment on that as a recruiter.
I can speak to that. As someone that was on the that sat in the lens of a recruiter, and also as someone who helped candidates get prepared for their interviews as a coordinator. So I've been on both sides, where I was on the front lines with candidates trying to get really confident being on Zoom like this. One is just going to be very awkward. Looking at a screen, you're not going to be looking directly in someone's face. Just suspend that awkwardness. It's awkward for both of you, so you don't have to talk about it. You acknowledge for yourself. You can move on from that. The other piece is setting space and getting to know the software you're using are probably the two tactical things that you should really do beforehand. Don't use the interview itself to learn how to use Zoom and how to press all the buttons to get to your interview. If anything, that'll just undermine your confidence and make you thing you're doing. So really get to know your software first, and also just your space is set up to the point where you're comfortable in it first and foremost, and making sure that it's a space where you can really think and not have distractions really impact your conversation with somebody. I know a lot of us, like, you might be taking your calls over in a closet. That's totally fine. You might be doing it at your kitchen table. That's totally fine. You might be doing it from your bed or your bedroom. That's totally fine. Just know that you have control of your environment and control the controllables there. Although I will say, if you're going to take your interview from your bedroom, just make sure you make your bed, because that's a distraction that can definitely trip you up more so than your interviewer. So I would say, yeah, set up your space and get comfortable using the software you're using beforehand. Don't use the day of your interview for that.
Yeah, I think I would just add, don't feel like you need to fill awkward silences, because I think sometimes with connections, it might be slower on their end. And I think, at least for me personally, I have a tendency to just want to talk, but just be comfortable with silence, which seems a little uncomfortable. But I would also echo what Vinny said just about practicing, right? Because it just looks bad on your part if you didn't take the 10 or 15 minutes to make sure that you have whatever program that firm is using downloaded correctly. You haven't tested your audio. So just do that in advance.
Great.
Pam, can I add one more thing to that?
Absolutely.
So Pam, you talked about this earlier when you talked about your internet connection. That's going to happen too, whether it's for you as the candidate or the interviewer. Know that it's not going to be the deal breaker if for some reason your Wi-Fi breaks and you can't finish your interview. Know that we're all in the same boat all over the world, and that we're going to have empathy towards that. So don't panic. Don't think like you've blown it. Just know that you can just say, hey, this happened to me. Do you mind if we reschedule? And that's what you can control on your side.
Good point.
This is tangential, but I'm still like a huge advocate of thank you notes after an interview. So I don't know if the thinking has evolved on that, but even when I interview candidates, I'm always like, I didn't send a thank you note. So I would encourage you all to continue sending thank you notes. They can be brief over email. They don't have to be long, but I think that's something that should still be done. Because I know one of the questions that we were going to talk about was cover letters, which I don't think are necessary. But I think thank you notes still go a long way.
Good. Yeah, no, we are of the mindset that thank you notes should be sent via email within 24 hours of your interview for maximum impact. Grammatically correct, no spelling errors, please.
Yeah. I would actually say that even quicker than that, if possible. Oftentimes I'm asked to make a decision pretty quickly on if I want a candidate, or the quicker I have them I'm interviewing a lot of people, and if I have them top of mind, I can write a quick evaluation, forward their resume off to a hiring manager, and write some comments. So the quicker the better, and make reference to something that we talked about, not just like a thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Good point. We do have a question in the chat from Katie. She's asking for advice on the video interviews that take place where there's not a person across from you, but it's those higher view type videos. How do you, let me just look at the question again. What do you recommend doing to look as natural as possible? Because these are the hardest ones that this student has attempted to do. Any advice on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in there. I think it's similar to what I would say when you're practicing for any interview. I'm a big proponent of actually practicing, right? So put yourself in that kind of awkward scenario of talking to a screen and view yourself doing that, or ask someone to observe you, because it is kind of an unnatural thing. But similar to the don't test your Wi-Fi and don't test your connectivity the day of, don't test that awkward feeling the day of, because it's bound to get you flustered. So I think I will admit to practicing out loud for interviews in my dorm room multiple times, and feeling very awkward about it. But it's amazing. The more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes. So I would say get in front of your screen, say your responses out loud, and just make that something that's not going to be a distraction, so you can actually focus on what you want to say.
Awesome. And just so students know, we do have a software called Interview Stream that can be accessed via Handshake, where you will do just that. Well, you will look at a screen, answer questions. You can be videotaped, and you can look back at the video, so you can see any nonverbals that you may display, and how you answered the questions, if you say 16 times or like 16 times during the interview. So we do have that tool that you can practice with, that's accessed through the resources in Handshake.
Yeah, but I think just to piggyback off of that, there's a lot of behavioral questions out there. I think as best you can, just try to have examples for some of those questions. And it's almost like you don't want to come off as rehearsed, but you want to have sort of examples when someone says, what's the greatest challenge you faced? And you don't have to sort of sit there and be like, well, that's a good question. Let me think about that. So as best as you can prepare some of these behavioral questions and think about real life examples, it sort of becomes second nature. And the more that you interview, it's just like a muscle that you're developing, right? So you can very quickly sort of say, like, great question. I would say the greatest challenge that I faced was studying abroad because of XYZ, or balancing, work study with this sport and this class. And you're not sort of like thinking on the spot. And it shows that you're prepared. So again, I would leverage, obviously you're all still taking classes, but we're all home. So kind of do that in your spare time, right? And if a parent or like a sibling can sort of observe you, I think to Pam's point, sometimes I myself don't even realize how many times I say, or so you kind of need someone to call you out and say, like, you said that 10 times, right? So.
Yeah, I would say I'm going to add to that as someone that I recruit for our entry-level sales team in our Cambridge office, and we use video interviews as a first step, just because of the volume. And also, if I did interviews on the phone with everybody, it would take me a month just to get through just the one wave. So we use video interviews just for this purpose. And I would say the biggest tip here is just to be okay with yourself, like be okay with being yourself. It is okay to stumble. We know how awkward it is to not have anyone respond to your answers. And we also know that it's just not typical. Like, it's not in our nature as social human beings to just like not have someone respond to you. So it is okay to just sound like yourself. It is okay to just to say the likes. Like, we're not going to ding you for that. And it's also okay if you run out of time for your answer. Obviously, if you spent a minute not answering the question, that's one thing. But if you got cut off at like your last sentence, we're not going to ding you for that as interviewers at the end of the day. So
Great, thank you all. Seniors, any final questions?
Yes. Is it Sam or Sammy brought up something about cover letters? Would any of you be willing to talk about like an aspect of a cover letter that you look for as you read them, if you read them?
I just think they've evolved, right? Like, it's not sort of like how it was when I was going to see Pam in 2005, 2006. I graduated in 2007. But now I think a lot of that might happen over like LinkedIn or email. So I think they used to be longer. So if you're emailing someone, like a paragraph with an introduction, not 3 paragraphs, I think it just needs to be more succinct. But I think definitely for me, like a formal cover letter, like that's attached to a resume, I don't look at. I just go straight to the resume.
Ditto on my side. Yeah, I don't read big, long, formal letters. I really don't have time for it, to be very honest. I mean, stuff's moving at such a pace. So, but I do read resumes and I know exactly what I'm looking for on the resumes. But what I also read is the right kind of personal intro that leads me to the resume. And if that has spellings, or it's written to the wrong company, or it is written like so generically that I'm like, oh, clearly they didn't even take 2 seconds to figure out like X, Y, and Z about the job or me. Honestly, I disregard the whole email and the resume. So I don't know that formal cover letter is a thing, but in my world, that intro note that might be 4 sentences really matters. So I would be focused on the 4-sentence note personally, and you know, your 4-sentence LinkedIn ping that I get that tells me who you are and why you're attaching your resume, that makes me want to open your resume, is my advice.
Yeah, I would say cover letters can count against you if you happen to write something that doesn't either relate to the role, or there's typos, things that can just show a lack of preparation beforehand. So know that they can work against you if you include it. My other tip is use the job description to gauge if it's required. If it's not required, don't include it, because again, it can hurt you if you find that it's just not going to help out your resume and your application. And if it is required, then do your due diligence to make sure you're connecting the dots for the reader about why your experience connects to the job. And the job description is literally the answers to your test, where it's, as long as you're connecting your experience to the thing that's written in the description about requirements and skills and other things like that, qualifications, then you're going to stand out a lot more in that way. I'll stop there.
If I could just touch on the resumes for a second.
Absolutely.
I see a lot where formatting, there's a period after one bullet, then there's not a period. So really make sure that it's all consistent, that it's written in the correct tense. So if you're currently doing it, it's present. If you did it, it's in the past. I think sometimes people overlook that. And really just spelling. I mean, that's just going to be like, I think people off the bat, if there's a lot of people applying and there's spelling errors in your resume, for me, it's going to automatically discount you. So that's the first sort of thing that people are seeing about you. So really just make sure that it's crisp and as many eyes as you can get on it, have people review it.
Yeah, and I think related to that, like, I think a lot of this is risk management. Like, depending on who your resume or cover letter goes to, this answer may be different. Honestly, I myself am not great at like checking and details, and so I'm a little more lenient than other people may be on these things. But in general, you want to mitigate that risk as much as possible. So make sure it's checked, make sure the format's right, make sure it's the right company, make sure it's genuine. But the other thing I would say, on the other hand, it's like, make sure you don't knock yourself out for any of those. But on the how do you make yourself stand out, some things that students have done that have really impressed me were, one, being abreast of like current events on my company, and really things that I can tell, like you've taken the time and looked into, because I can also tell when you haven't. So be careful, right? And also you've taken the time to talk to someone at the company. So again, we have a lot of alum that work for different companies. For me, if a Holy Cross student, we hire someone from Holy Cross every year. And if someone's taken the time and spoken to one of those prior interns, that stands out a lot to me, because you've now gone an extra step to get to know the company, to get to know the internship experience. So I would definitely recommend on the side of like, hey, do all of those things. They're critically important to ensure you don't do something that disqualifies you, but also try to think about the ways that you can make it very targeted. And I think that's what Kara was saying as well, in terms of that 4-letter of like when you send the note, or when it's, you know, in some way embedded in your resume or a cover letter, those things stand out to
me. And I would say too, it stands out, like for Pepsi, for GE, you are recruiting on campus every year. If the student has not talked with last year's intern, it almost is like, why didn't you do that? Not that it's just good to do it, but why didn't you do it, correct?
right? Or even any one of the alum, right? Because as we're hiring interns, they stay. So if you, like, LinkedIn has become a social networking tool to the point I get people reaching out all the time, complete strangers. But if, again, if you're like being targeted of like, hey, I'm interested in PepsiCo, right? I want to learn more, my intent, right? You're making it clear. I'm applying to this internship, would love to hear about the experience. Would you or someone on the team be willing? Like 9, 10 times out of 10, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna help, right? And I'll talk to you, and I can say the same for anyone else on the PepsiCo team, and I'm sure I can say the same for our fellow panelists. But it's important that you try in some way to reach out and talk to someone, because there's a lot of people at a company that big, right? Like, we have a lot of folks you can talk to, and we're going to help, and we're going to be excited to hear from you. And that really shows us that you want to be part of the community, and you want to learn about what that's like.
Awesome. The last question that I had for the panelists is, if you could just share, it's actually not a question, but I guess it is. Can you share any final words of advice, any tips over and above what you've already shared tonight, which has been fantastic? Any final words that you want to leave our class of 2020 with tonight?
So my final words are to make lemonade. Go out, take the lemons, make lemonade. It's not exactly what we thought it was going to be. We might have thought we were going to be making orange juice, but we're going to make lemonade. So grab lemons, make the most of it, make a big difference. The world needs you a lot.
Agree. And I would just add to that, along the same lines, be resilient, right? Make this something you look back on and say, wow, look what I did during that time, right? I could have hid under a rock and not used my talents and contributed to the world, but instead I did, in a big way. So go out and do what you love and be passionate and lead.
Yeah, I'll say 2 things. One that Vinny mentioned at the very beginning, but I want to take a moment and pause on, is make sure you're taking care of your physical and your mental health first. You know, it's a really difficult time, and it's a really big transition in your life. And if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to put your best foot forward. So start there, right? And ensure that you have the time to eat good food, right? Or get exercise, or meditate, or be with friends and family, whatever that may look like. Take care of yourself, and that will aid you, right? And you're going to be better for it. And then the second piece is, you know, be willing to ask for help, but also be willing to put the work in. And I don't mean that in a harsh way. Our help as Holy Cross alum is unconditional, right? Which is incredible, and part of the benefit of being part of this community. But in order to benefit from it, right, and to be able to pay it forward and have a moment like this where, you know, maybe you and I are on a call one day and we're recalling this, but you need to take the time to digest, you know, what is the help that's being given, apply it, practice it, and then you're going to be able to pay it forward.
Love that.
I would just say, oh, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead, Sam. You go for it.
Just be patient, and don't be hard on yourselves. I know when I was graduating, it's very easy to compare yourself to your friends that might have a job offer, might be starting a job, and to sort of wallow a little bit. I was definitely there, but I would just say, like, these are just crazy times, so don't be hard on yourself, and just be patient. That would be my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, I would echo that. You're all already living this experience where not everything will go to plan. Albeit this is an experience I never would wish upon anybody. But just know that if you're going through this right now, you will also go through this in your job search as well. Many of us echoed that all of our career paths and roles right now were paths that we didn't expect to take when we graduated from college. I'm also one of those people. I shared that in the notes there. But so just know that not everything's going to go to plan, but as long as you're patient with yourself and keep trying, and also really embrace who you are and putting yourself forward for those opportunities that stick out to you, that's the thing you can control, and what will lead you to your first and many opportunities after that.
Yeah, I have the pleasure of sitting on a panel of wonderfully articulate people, but my advice is just, really just be true to yourself and do what Holy Cross taught us to do, and that's be men and women for others. Figure out ways to use the skills that you have inside of you to help the world in whatever way possible, and have a little bit of fun doing it, because you got to smile and be happy with everything that you're doing.
That was wonderfully articulate.
You guys have been fantastic. I really, really appreciate you being here for our students. I think the world of you, and I really value the advice that you've shared with our students. And students, please take heed, listen to what these wonderful alumni have shared with you. These are strange, strange times. You're all in it. We're all in it together, but all of the class of 2020 Everywhere USA College is experiencing these same things. So it's hard. It's really, really hard right now. But these alums and many, many more alumni out there are ready and eager to help you. So thank you everyone for coming. Vinny, love your background. I will follow up students with everyone of the alumni who are on this panel with contact information, and just remember to be patient if you reach out, because it is crazy for them right now. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you all being here. And to my alumni,
And Pam, on behalf of all the alum and students on here, and to you and Amy and Cassie, thank you for getting this Zoom together. You do amazing work. Talk about grabbing a situation and making the most of it. The school is very lucky to have you.